And then it says here, the recommended needles are 6 millimeter circular needles. All right, here we go. We'll start now with the needles. I wasn't able to discuss this in detail last time, but ang circular needles that they're talking about, okay, for example, ang hinihingi niya is 6. So I will need, I don't have my 6, it's engaged somewhere. Let's pretend this is 6. Okay. Can you see the ano? Can you see the needles? Okay. I do this and then I'm going to get a cable. I'm going to pick one cable here. Okay. Anything that fits, probably this one. Okay. And then I'm going to screw this. Kasi it requires 24 inches. When they say 24 inches, what they meant is from tip to tip, the needle should be 24 inches long. Okay? So here, this needle is 24 inches long. So, my needle tip is 5 inches. I have two of them, that's 10. And the cable needle is 14 inches long. So when they ask for 24 inches or longer, this is 24 from tip to tip. Okay? You measure it here from tip to tip. Okay? And when they say 6 millimeter, what they mean is the diameter of the needle. So this is 6 millimeter, 24 inches. Do not get attached to the 6 millimeter kasi you might need to change it. Why? We have what we call a knitting gauge. Okay? Are you familiar with the knitting gauge or any gauge for that matter?
No.
Justine from Crochet?
Just like you to make small, just to measure how much you're, yeah.
Okay, why do we have gauge? Kasi we have what we call, I call it the great knitting equalizer, a gauge swatch. Why? Kasi for you guys, for example, John is a bit of a tight knitter. And Justine is a loose knitter. Let's just pretend it is what it is na. Justine is a loose knitter, John is a tight knitter, and I'm a normal knitter because I practice my tension. So if you guys are going to create, let's say we're making a sweater. Ang sweater, let's say, is 34 inches yung width or on the chest. Pag si John yung nag-knit ng sweater, malamang ang lalabas doon 33 or 32. Kasi you're a tight knitter. With Justine, if you follow the same instructions as John, because you're a loose knitter, instead of 34, you might come up with 35 or 36. Okay? So, how do you make sure that you get the 34? You have to make a knitting gauge, a gauge swatch. A gauge swatch is similar to this. It's a square with a garter border. Okay? And in the middle is the stitch you're going to use. So, I made this because I was planning to make a sweater using the stitch. Okay, it's called an Irish moss or a double moss stitch. So, what you need to do, you need to buy this foam board. Okay, from a children's section of the department store. Meron nata sa Daiso. So, I normally get this. If you want to get the expensive ones, the ones that are meant for knitting, may grid yun kasi na eksaktong 1 inch square per grid. Okay, I don't need that because I have a tape measure. But, for professional knitters, they need those. So, I buy this and then I knit a swatch. Okay? So, at this point, I'm going to tell you, if the pattern calls, as you can see here, it calls for 2 skeins. 2 skeins meaning, let me just get my skein now, hold on, so I can show you. Okay. This is a skein. Can you see? They ask for 2 skeins of Venus worsted. 185 yards lang yung skein niya. Itong skein na to ni Trey, which is, oh no, wala na to pala, yung Dapper Dreamer Stardust niya, I think this is 350 yards. So I only need 1. However, my advice to you always is to buy an extra skein. So pag hinihingi niya a specific yardage, always buy extra. 1, when you buy yarn, meron siyang plus minus 5 meters. Kasi they go by weight. They don't have a machine that measures it per yard per meter. They go by weight. They just make approximation That this weighs, let's say, 100 grams, and it's going to have 350 yards, plus minus 5 yards, depending on how much is spun. So, you don't want to, one, be playing yarn chicken. Yung nando ka na sa dulo, aabot ba ako? Hindi. Aabot ba yarn? Hindi. You don't want that. So make sure you buy extra yarn, always. Second, the dye lots change. Which means, if I buy this red now, I buy 6 of them. Kulang ako, kailangan ko ng 7. Yung susunod na dye lot may have a slightly different shade of red. They will follow the same formula, but there are environmental factors that may change the shade. The sun, the composition of the water at that time, the amount of mineral in the water, how much time it takes for them to... Kung binabad nila 10 seconds longer or 10 seconds lesser, it's going to change the shade of red. So one reason to make sure you don't run out of yarn. Two, to make sure you have the same dye lot all through the end. And third, because you need to make gauge swatches. Okay? Now the gauge swatch, as you can see here, I made a square. Normally it's about 30 stitches. And I make a garter border. And in the middle is the stitch. I'm going to wash this in mild laundry soap. And then I'm going to put it in between two towels and wring it out. Once it's wrung out, it's still going to be damp. Before it dries out, you have to pin it down on a foam board like this. Okay? So let's pin it down. You're gonna pin it down to shape. Kasi obvious naman, no, hindi siya square, di ba? Medyo nag-wrinkle pa siya. So we're gonna stretch it to a perfect square. Okay. Not overly stretched, just enough to have the shape it's intended to have. Okay. Do I need to put one on the sides? Yes, I do. Yeah. Okay. And then you let it dry out. Okay. Once it's dry, it's going to retain its shape. However, ang mga acrylics, natural fibers, yung mga animal fibers, they will retain their shape once they're dry. But for acrylic or anything with any acrylic blend, basta may plastic yan, hindi natural yung fiber, it's going to shrink back to its original shape, no matter how much you pin. So my suggestion is to apply heat. Okay? Use a steam iron, use something else just to melt those plastics in the acrylic, so that when you stretch it should retain its shape once it cools down. Okay? So if it's an animal fiber, it will retain its shape, but if it won't, if it's acrylic, you need to apply heat. Keep that in mind. Okay. Once that's stretched out, okay, I'm going to take my tape measure, and then we're going to measure. On the gauge here on the pattern, it says, after blocking, 1 inch is equivalent to 4 stitches and 5 rows. Let's increase that so you won't have a hard time. There. Can you see it? It says there 1 inch. You should have 4 stitches and 5 rows. I did not block very aggressively. I did not block very aggressively too, because normally I'd be stretching it until it opens up the design. But here it's fine. So let's measure. Okay? Remember what I taught you? How to count? Remember I taught you how to count your stitches? You count the number of V's or you count the number of bars. So here, I have a 1 inch here. Let's count. Okay. This is my 1 inch. Okay. Let's count. That's 1 V. Can you see?
No po.
No. Sige, let's unshare this first para na ang malaki yung sunscreen. Stop presenting. There. Can you see it now? Better? Alright.
Yeah.
So I have here 1 inch. Okay? And let's count. That's 1 V, 2 V's, 3, 1 bar. That's a bar. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Clearly, I'm off. Ang hinihingi niya is, okay, ang hinihingi niya is 4 stitches, 5 rows. I have 8 rows. Because if I'm counting vertically, I'm counting the rows. Okay? I have 8 rows, which means what? I have too many rows per inch, right? Okay. And as for the number of stitches, let's count. So that again, we're counting the bars and the V's. That's 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 stitches to an inch. Okay. Let's keep that in mind. I'm going to share the pattern again. Okay. All right. It says here after blocking, for a 1 inch, I should have 5 rows and 4 stitches. But instead, I have 8 rows and 5 stitches. So what do? I have too many stitches. I have to use bigger needles. So instead of 6 millimeter, I'm going to go up either 7 millimeter or 8 in order for me to achieve the gauge swatch that it indicates, which is 5 rows and 4 stitches. What happens, let's say, kung masyadong konti naman yung stitches ko, like I only have 3 stitches and 4 rows, what I need to do is get smaller needles. So 5 millimeter maybe, 5.5. So keep this in mind. Smaller needles, more stitches. Bigger needles, lesser stitches. So assess, does your gauge swatch indicate you have more stitches or less? And if you do have more, that means you need to use bigger needles. If you have less, you need smaller needles. Is that clear? Magulo? Hindi naman.
It's clear po.
Questions? Okay, good. This is important, especially if you plan to knit garments. Kasi, honestly, I don't use gauge swatch. I don't. Because if I'm knitting a hat, the size is not as bad as a sweater. Like, you can big a knit or hat and you can just fold the brim and it's fine. A scarf, hindi ganun kalaking bagay yung medyo maliit or medyo malaki siya. With a shawl, it depends on how big a shawl you want. Like if it's a shawlette lang, then it's fine. If it's bigger, that's fine too. But depending on how acceptable it is to you. Kung yung lalabas yung work is smaller or bigger, then that's on you. But for sweaters or worn garments, especially the fitted ones, I strongly suggest you may use a gauge swatch. Okay? Another tip, you will have a lot of extra yarn. So with the extra yarn, I normally knit gauge swatches na. So I have lots of small squares from spare yarn. I would put tags on them na, okay, I knitted with 4 millimeter, this, ganyan. So the next time I need to knit a sweater, ito yung yarn na gagamitin ko. Alam ko na yung gauge swatch ko. I don't need to keep doing it. Okay, that's just one tip that I can offer you. Okay, let me put this away and let's continue with the pattern. Questions so far on the gauge swatch?
None
This is
po.
the biggest mystery kasi when it comes to patterns eh. The rest is easier to understand. Okay, let me just put this away.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
You have borders, and then you're only going to count the one in the middle part, right? Not including. Okay.
Yeah. This is really just to help settle the stitch in the middle. Kasi kung edge to edge na, as you can, may mga stitches that will curl. And you want you want the yarn to be, you want the yarn to be relaxed and the right shape. So this one affords you a place to stretch it for one, but hindi mo nasisira yung integrity ng stitch in the middle kasi ito yung pinipin mo. Okay. So this one, my standard is, I think, basta square siya. This one for me is about an inch on either side. This is, an inch. Tapos yung gitna has to be minimum 4 inches.
Minimum part.
Always. So it will change. I cannot tell you that you only need to say 30 stitches or 40 stitches to come up with a gauge swatch. It depends kasi on the stitch that you're using and the yarn that you're using, plus the needle. Basta ang mahalaga yung gitna is minimum 4 inches on both sides. Okay. Other questions? No. Alright, let's move on. Okay. Ayan na. Sabi niya, don't be afraid to be bold with this pattern. It can be knit in almost any yarn, practically any size. And this is true because I did not follow this. One, okay, I'm gonna tell you now. I did not use 6 millimeter. I think I only used 5.5. Kasi ayokong masyadong meshy yung gitna. I want it to be a bit solid. Okay? So I used the 5.5. Okay. Now here's the other important part of the pattern. you will come up with the abbreviations. And abbreviations are a tricky thing because walang universal abbreviation ng letters.
Mm.
Hindi katulad ng crochet na, alam mo yun, forever, ang SC is single crochet, DC is double crochet, across the board. And the symbols used for the symbols used for knitting patterns is also dependent on the writer. Hindi lang siya universal. Hindi katulad ng if you go to you get a German crochet book and a Japanese crochet book, iisa lang yung symbols. With knitting, it's totally different. The writers have their own system. Okay, so now, let's go through the abbreviations. And again, I would suggest you go through this a few times before you start your pattern. So, it says here, when you see K, it means knit. P is purl. SL is slip. So how do you slip? You remember what I told you about slipping knitwise and purlwise? Okay, here's why. So I'm going to knit here. And if it's asking you to slip, I normally slip purlwise. Why? Okay, let me close this muna so you can see. Okay, so in every stitch that you have, okay, I'm going to remove one. You always have this loop. Okay? You have the left side of the loop, you have the right side of the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When this is mounted, the right side should always be facing you. So ganyan siya. Okay? Hindi siya ganon.
Mm-hmm.
If this happens, you will feel some sort of resistance. Okay? So normally, the right side is always facing you. Now, this also means that you have a front side and you have a back side. So we call this the front loop and you call this the back loop. Itong nasa likod niya. Yan. It's the back loop. So when you say slip, I normally slip purlwise. Why? Because when I slip, the right side is still facing me. Okay? If it says slip knitwise, that means you insert your needle knitwise and you slip. What happens now is that the left side is facing you. Okay? Keep that in mind. So keep an eye out on the pattern if it says slip knitwise. But normally, if it just says slip, I just slip it purlwise so that the right side is still facing you. Okay? Questions? Done? Good. Okay. So that is slip. And then we go to yarn over. Yarn over simply means, okay, let me knit this one. Okay. Yarn over simply means you put a yarn over the needle. Okay? So this is fine if let's say the next stitch is a yarn. But if it's a purl, once you make a yarn over, you still have to go in between. Okay? So you can purl. Okay? Why? So let's say I'm going to put a yarn over and knit the next stitch. This is fine. But if I put a yarn over and I'm going to purl and I don't put it in between, what happens is, this is my yarn over, I purl, nawawala yung yarn over kasi I go straight to wrapping the yarn to the needle. So keep in mind when you're slipping a stitch and the next stitch is a purl, you still have to go around and put it in between. Okay? Alright. So that's a yarn over. The next one is M1L. Okay. M1L, by the way, I'm doing this just to demonstrate to you the different stitches. You don't have to memorize this. This is really just to illustrate na ang mga knitting symbols are very, very literal. There's no hidden meaning. So when they tell you to make one left, you have to make one left. And this means, see, hindi to klaro sa mga newbie eh, but make one left means you need to make an additional stitch in the middle here and it leans towards the left. Pag ganun siya. How do you do that? So, if I'm going to make one that's leaning left, see this bar in between?
Mm-hmm.
This is my knitting work. If I stretch it like this, you see this bar in between?
Yeah.
Okay. If I lift it from the front, and then I knit through the back loop, you can see that I already made one stitch and it's leaning to the left. Okay? Now, what if I'm going to make one right? Ang make one right, you take the same bar, but I lift it from the back, and then I knit it like a normal stitch. So, knit. There you go. So if you can see here, okay, itong make one left na to, it goes to the left. Yeah, sharp na. It goes to the left. This one here goes to the right. Okay? See it? Okay, excuse me na, give me a minute.